He built an empire on a very practical promise: keep the bugs out and the comfort in. Gary W. Rollins, grandson of a generation that turned small businesses into national institutions, took a family name that was already known in the South and turned it into one of the quietest, most profitable empires in American services. His story is part old guard Southern dynasty, part hard-nosed corporate consolidation, and part modern billionaire saga. Wealth quietly accumulated, occasionally litigated over, and occasionally spent in ways that make headlines. What follows is the story of a man who made pest control big business, who navigated family infights and public scrutiny, and who kept trying to expand the footprint of a company that touches the lives of millions, often without them ever thinking about it. Gary W. Rollins was born in 1944 into a family whose name was already attached to enterprise. The Rollins family had made money across industries: broadcasting, real estate, and later pest control. Gary's father, O. Wayne Rollins, and his uncle, John W. Rollins, were generation builders, and the family culture was one of entrepreneurship, but also of quiet stewardship. Gary grew up with business conversations around the table and a practical view of risk: do the job right, scale it prudently, and make sure the books close. He went on to earn a Bachelor of Business Administration from the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga in 1967, a tie to his home state that would later return in a philanthropic flourish. The family business that would define Gary Rollins' career is Rollins Inc., the parent company of Orkin, and a constellation of pest control businesses across North America and beyond. What began as a regional operation matured into a diversified, publicly traded company with a business model that looks simple on paper but complex in execution: high-volume recurring revenue, local service footprints, and relentless operational discipline. Under Gary's direction, Rollins honed what every services company dreams of: scale without losing the local touch. The company's portfolio grew to include Orkin, Western Pest Services, Home Team Pest Defense, and a string of international subsidiaries that collectively manage millions of customer relationships and bring in billions in annual revenue. This isn't glamorous work, but it's indispensable, and that's partly why it became so profitable. Gary's tenure at the top of Rollins Inc. started well before the era of internet billionaires and flashy tech exits. He joined the board in 1981 and rose through positions that combined governance with operational oversight, eventually assuming the role of CEO of Rollins Inc. in 2001. He led the company at a time when consolidation in service industries was accelerating. Regional outfits either scaled up or risked being squeezed out. Gary chose the former. He pushed for acquisitions that would widen Orkin's footprint and shored up a business model based on recurring residential and commercial contracts, termite warranties, routine inspections, rodent control, and more. Under his stewardship, Rollins leaned into systems and processes that turned a network of local businesses into a seamless national service brand, ensuring steady cash flow and making the company attractive to investors. If there's a theme to Gary's leadership, it's a stubborn belief in steady expansion rather than headline-grabbing stunts. He kept margins healthy by focusing on the fundamentals: branded service, technician training, and the logistics of covering territory efficiently. Rollins invested in training programs and local offices, knowing that when a customer schedules a treatment for termites or rodents, reliability matters far more than marketing pizzazz. That investment mentality allowed the company to scale without losing the service quality that gave it durability. In short, Rollins made pest control a business you could model and multiply, and the market rewarded that predictability. The financial rewards followed. Gary Rollins emerged as one of the wealthier private businessmen in America. Family ownership, public shares, and decades of compounding business earnings piled up into a multi-billion-dollar fortune. Public profiles list him among the world's richest, and for good reason. Rollins Inc. is a multi-billion-dollar public company with a broad service footprint and recurring revenue the way a tech subscription business does, just less sexy and more durable. At different points, Bloomberg and Forbes have placed him in billionaire rankings, reflecting the value of his holdings and the family stake in Rollins Inc. Those tallies helped clarify what the business world had long known. This was a family that had turned steady service into generational wealth. No multi-generational fortune avoids friction, and the Rollins family saga included an ugly chapter of litigation. In the 2010s, disputes over cash allocations and governance boiled into lawsuits between Gary, his children, and cousins tied to another branch of the family. The feud read like a modern corporate soap opera: long-running litigation, public filings, accusations of improper distributions, and a mix of business and personal grievances that families who build empires sometimes face. The case stretched for nearly a decade and became a test of patience and legacy, ending only when the parties reached a confidential settlement in late 2019. The settlement closed one chapter, but left the broader story: how a family balances personal relationships with fiduciary responsibilities when massive sums are at stake. Philanthropy became another public-facing part of Gary's life. In 2018, Gary and his wife Kathleen made a headline-grabbing $40 million gift to his alma mater, the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, a donation large enough to rename the College of Business in his honor. It was a classical move for a billionaire with regional roots: invest in local institutions, tie a family name to civic advancement, and shape a legacy that extends beyond the boardroom. That $40 million donation did more than give his name to a college. It signaled a personal belief in education as a stabilizing force and an investment in the region that helped cultivate his early ambitions. For many wealthy executives from closely knit communities, such gifts are both personal and strategic, a way to give back and to ensure that the family narrative includes public contributions as well as private success. But public life brings scrutiny, and not all headlines were celebratory. Recent corporate filings and press coverage revealed eyebrow-raising perks associated with top executives, including a notable story about what the Financial Times described as a substantial dining room perk tied to Gary's position. Reporting indicated that certain executive dining expenses had risen into six figures, prompting questions from shareholders about the nature and scale of such benefits at a company that otherwise emphasizes conservative service economics. The moment was a reminder that when private behavior and public stewardship intersect, the optics can be as consequential as the ledger entries. For a high-profile family running a publicly traded company, every expense becomes a potential story. The business itself continued to grow and evolve as technology, regulation, and consumer expectations changed. Rollins Inc., largely through Orkin, has invested in pest management science, digital scheduling, and national branding that supports local franchises. The company's international expansion into the UK, Canada, Australia, and parts of Asia reflects a strategy of applying a repeatable service model across borders, adapting local practices while keeping centralized standards for training, safety, and customer service. The advantage is twofold: economies of scale in purchasing and training, and a consistent brand promise that reassures residential and commercial clients alike. That approach has helped Rollins maintain revenue in the billions and a workforce numbering in the tens of thousands across multiple continents. Gary Rollins' personal style, insofar as a largely private executive has one, has been described as patrician and businesslike. He's not a CEO known for Twitter storms or celebrity endorsements. Instead, he embodies a more classical corporate archetype: a boardroom presence, long-term strategic orientation, and an inclination to let the company's operational excellence do the talking. That temperament fits a business where trust matters more than flash. Homeowners don't need a charismatic CEO, they need consistent service and technicians who show up on time. Gary's reputation for steady oversight, even if it occasionally collided with family tensions, played to that reality. Succession matters in every family-owned or family-dominated business, and Rollins has navigated leadership transitions deliberately. After decades at the helm in various roles, Gary transitioned from CEO to chairman positions and ultimately to executive chairman emeritus as new leadership took over daily operations. Those transitions reflect the practical recognition that scale and governance require different skill sets: the long-range strategist who maintains family influence and the operational leader who runs the company day to day. By the start of 2023, Jerry E. Gallhoff Jr. had stepped into the CEO role, and the board reorganized leadership roles to reflect a new era while retaining Gary's counsel as a seasoned elder statesman. It's a common arc in family-affiliated public companies: preserve continuity while professionalizing management. If you look at the Rollins story through the lens of American capitalism, you see an important tension. The business is both straightforward and complex. Straightforward in the sense that pest control is a tangible service with obvious customer pain points. Complex because executing that service across thousands of local markets requires investment, standardization, and an appetite for acquisition. Gary Rollins saw a path for scaling a local set of services into a national network that benefits from centralized purchasing, training, and brand coherence. That thinking is what lifted a family-run collection of companies into public market valuation and ultimately into the billionaire ranks. There's a hidden art to selling a recurring service. Make it invisible when it works and memorable when it doesn't. Gary's company mastered that art. Customers don't think about their pest control company until they need it. That means retention hinges on dependable service and a reputation built over years, suburb by suburb. Rollins invested in the technician as the brand ambassador, the person in the driveway, uniform slightly rumpled, explaining a treatment plan. That human touch anchored a corporate growth story that could have been purely financial. It's why the brand, particularly Orkin, still evokes a kind of household recognition that translates into durable revenue. Yet wealth brings complexity in personal terms. The legal skirmishes with his children, culminating in the 2019 confidential settlement, shed light on the darker side of family fortunes: control, cash flow, and interpretation of the patriarch's intent. These disputes are rarely about a single dollar figure. They're about narrative. Who gets to define stewardship? Who gets access to control? And who gets recognized for contributions? For Gary, the resolution of those cases may have closed a heated chapter, but the episode stands as a cautionary tale about the entanglement of family and corporate governance. For students of business, it's a vivid reminder that company ownership isn't just a legal structure. It's often the arena where family politics play out. Beyond courts and boardrooms, Gary's public persona is also shaped by how the company fares in the market. Rollins Inc. has posted billions in annual revenues, built large share of market in North America, and maintained a defensive moat around its recurring service model. That steady financial picture is partly why investors have valued the stock and why the Rollins family's stake has translated into a multi-billion-dollar family fortune. Periodic share sales by the family and public markets' appetite for steady cash-flowing companies have been important liquidity events that helped convert private control into measurable net worth. Those moves also highlight the balance between retaining family influence and taking advantage of the capital markets to fuel growth. Gary's philanthropic moves, like the UTC gift, and his living standards have sometimes drawn scrutiny in the press, underscoring a modern paradox of billionaire life. The same wealth that enables civic generosity invites questions about compensation and perks. Journalists and shareholders watch both sides, the gifts that uplift communities and the internal benefits that executives enjoy. For Gary, those two narratives have coexisted: generous local philanthropy and corporate expense questions, and together they sketch the ambivalent public reaction wealthy executives often face. So where does that leave Gary Rollins after a life spent growing a very American business? It leaves him as a representative of a certain type of capital: patient, regionally rooted, oriented around tangible service and operational excellence, rather than disruptive innovation. His was the kind of wealth that accumulates when you build something people rely on year after year. It also leaves him as the center of a family narrative that had both public triumphs and private disputes. A reminder that money magnifies relationships, sometimes in helpful ways and sometimes in painful ones. There's a final, pragmatic lesson in the Rollins arc for anyone watching business play out across generations. Build a business that solves a constant need. Invest in the people who deliver that solution, and plan for the eventual ripple effects of wealth and control. Gary Rollins did that in spades. He matured a family legacy into a durable public company, used the wealth to shape his community, and navigated the inevitable governance problems that come with an $8 billion family fortune. He did it without much fanfare, and in the process, turned pest control into steady capitalism that keeps homes comfortable and families safe, often without anyone thinking about the man behind the service. In the end, Gary Rollins' biography is not a tale of overnight genius or market disruption. It's a story of compounding competence, of spending decades building a brand, improving the mechanics of service delivery, and defending a family enterprise across good times and bad. It's the cleaner, quieter side of American business, the side where billion-dollar empires are not only made by innovation, but by consistent execution, by systems that work, and by leaders who understand that sustaining a company is as much about discipline as it is about ambition. For that, the Rollins name and Gary W. Rollins' stewardship will remain a study in how patient, persistent business can become generational wealth.